Okay. So yeah. So we can find out that in life, every man has twin obligations. So what do you mean by twin obligation? That's called as a two simultaneously duties, right? Or two duties. Obligations means called as the responsibilities and duties, right? So twins obligations means called as a two similar duties or responsibilities, right? Obligations to his family, right? So or that's called as the duties towards his families, duties towards his parents, duties towards his wife and children, right? So that's what each and every man has, right? And the author also stated he has an obligation to his people, right? He has an obligation to his people means what? Now that's called as a uh, and he has. So it indicates that two of the obligation, one is called as a, towards his family, and the other one is called as a, towards his people. People means his community, his country. Is not it? So twin obligations, right? So at the same time, he pointed his community, his country in a civil and a humane. In a civil and a humane means with the civilized manner and also in a kind-hearted, right? Kind-hearted gesture, right? So he also pointed, what does he point here? Now he pointed that uh, a humanist society or kind society, each man is able to, right? Each man, so yeah. So each man is able to fulfill those obligations. Those obligations means that called as the duties and responsibilities towards his family, his society, right? His country, his people, his means all those things are indicating about his obligations. According to his what? According to his own inclinations and abilities. It depends upon his own interest and based on his own abilities that he can give, that he can give to whom, that he can give to his families and also his family and also to his uh, country or the people. But in a country like South Africa, so when the author states about each man, so he points out that each man who presents in a country or in a society, right? So and his responsibility towards his family and his country and his people and his society. But when it comes to the country called South Africa, right, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth and a color to fulfill both of those obligations. Both of those obligations means both of those duties, right? It's very difficult. If a man means belongs to my birth means what? My type of family and also the color. If the color is black, right, then it is very difficult that person to means to fulfill the obligation or duties, right, which is which are means which are his priority, right? In South Africa, the author said that in South Africa a man of color who attempted to live as a human being was punished and isolated. So now look into this particular line where it is stated that what a man of color
Excuse me, sir.
yes.
Sir, why that person cannot means obligate both of that things like means obligations to his family and obligations to his society and community. So why he cannot do both?
What did you say?
Right?
Why?
I asked that. Sir, why that person who is born like Nelson Mandela, that is black, cannot fulfill both of the obligations?
Did not you see that the author pointed from the beginning that what? Now, in a country like South Africa, what do you find out in South Africa? Apartheid system, yes or no?
Apartheid.
What kind of a system that you find out in South Africa?
Sir, apartheid.
What do you mean by apartheid system?
Segregation of white and black.
It is called as a policy or political system. A policy of a political system. Always remember the meaning of apartheid system is called as a policy of a means a political system. And that policy which is erected by whom? which is erected by the Britishers, right? And that policy, which actually is nothing but a weapon that segregate or fragmented two of the means community here. One is called as the Britishers, white people, and these white people erected this system to separate means black people, as well as means create the kind of a hatredness, right, between the means black people to the black people and white people to the black people. That is the means apartheid or political system. You would also find out other political policy of the political system, like what if a person belongs to South Africa, born in a black family, right? So doesn't have got the kind of a benefit, right? That the benefit which is offered to the white people. That is what called as a biased, prejudiced, is not it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, hope you understood.
Clearly,
Sorry.
sir. Hello, sir. I said that I understood it clearly.
Okay. Now, in South Africa, a man of color who attempted to live as a human being was punished and isolated. Look into this. A man of color who attempted to live as a human being was punished and isolated. So, punished and isolated means that's called as a what kind of a punishment? Now, that he belongs to the means community called as where black people are living, right? So punishment is indicating as a he would not get the kind of a liberate, or he would not get the kind of a liberty. That liberty is given to whom? That liberty is given to the means white people. So the means black people were living in a kind of a life called as isolation. What do you mean by isolation? That called as a lonely, right? So it means they you would find out that further in the author stated that how means for that marriage, for that going out abroad, for that further study, they do not get any kind of a permission, and they would have to take the permission. These are called as a means of freedom, or means birthright of the birthright of an individual, and that right is restricted, right? That is why the author stated in South Africa, a man who tried to fulfill his duty to his people was surely, inevitably means what? Now surely raped from his family. Raped means what is the meaning of raped? What is the meaning of raped? Raped means called as a
Sir,
state.
killing. Kill.
Not killing actually. That called as a separated from his family. He cannot means get back to his family again, right? So his uh, people was surely his duty to his people was surely separated from his family and his home, and was forced and his home, and was forced to live a life apart. He was not killed, right? His home and was forced to live a life apart. So it is also stated a twilight existence of secrecy. A twilight existence means existence of secrecy means what? What is the meaning of a twilight existence of secrecy and rebellion? It is called as a half of the day. Sorry.
No, sir, you can.
Yeah. A twilight existence of secrecy and rebellion. What does it mean? It means called as a means a half of the day is past and half of the means a day is still there. And that half of the day is called as a setting down, right? Or dusk. Dusk of the day. Do you understand the meaning of dusk of the day? That called as evening, right? Hello?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So the dusk, dusk, a twilight existence of secrecy and rebellion. So it means that called as a part of the day is completed and the part of the day is still there, right? And that existence of secrecy and rebellion. Secrecy and rebellion means what? Now that called as a protest against the means of white people, and create the kind of a secrecy, right, against the white people. So the authors pointed here that I did not in the beginning, I did not in the beginning chose to place my people above my family, right? But in so it means he gave the first priority to his family, right? So, but at the same time, but in attempting to serve my people, right, I found that I was disturbed from fulfilling my obligations as a son, a brother, a father, and a husband, right? It means he started ignoring his family, right? That's what he wanted to convey. So even he also pointed, I was not born with a hunger to be free. i was not born I was not born with a hunger to be free, right? So I was born free. So look into this particular line. What does the author try to point out? I was not born with a hunger to be free. Like when you are a kid, you do not know anything about the freedom, liberty, or called as a veteran, neophyte, right? All such kind of a terms. You means you are new, you are completely fresher, you are innocent, you are a kid, like you live a life of kid, right? You were not born with a hunger to be free. You were born free, right? So free in every way that you possibly know, whatever you know, right? That's something called as a free to you, right? That is what describing freedom for you. Like if today, if I tell you what is the meaning of freedom to a 5 year boy, so the 5 year boy will say that what, to have my means whatever the kind of a food he likes the most, that is, that's what he should get, right? And he should get the time for playing with his friends, right? He did not want to go school on the day, right, on a particular day, so he should not allow to go that day, right? So he wanted to study only this amount of means book and this amount of subjects. So that's what he believes that freedom mean to that, right? So it's called as a kid, right? Childish thought. So that's what the author stated here. I was not born with a hunger to be free. I was born free. Free in every way that I could know, I possibly know. Free to run in the fields near my mother's hut. Now that's what the author also stated. What do you mean by freedom to a 5 year or a 6 year boy? So, or to him, when he was born without means of hunger to be free. So he says that free to run in the fields means playing and go near to my mother's hut, free to swim, right, in the clear stream that ran through my village, right, free to roast mealies under the stars and ride the broad back of slow moving bulls, as long as I obeyed my father, right? Obeyed my father, and also I abided by the customs of my tribe. Abided by the customs of my tribe means I obeyed the rule of my community, my family, right? So, and also he stated, I was not troubled by the laws of man or God. So, whatever the law man has made or whatever the law God has created. So, if I do not create any kind of a trouble or go against of that, so means I was living a free life. And that's what freedom to me, right? It means that freedom is called as a freedom of a kid, right? Freedom of a kid. So he also pointed that what, now it was only when I began, it was only when I started to learn that my boyhood freedom was an illusion. So, but later in the further stages, you can point out he was nothing but a young, right? He was turning into adult, right? And he started learn that his boyhood freedom was nothing but an illusion, right? So boyhood freedom means the kind of means a freedom he was getting. He was not troubling to the God. He was not troubling to the laws of man, right? He was doing all such kind of a thing, right? All those kind of freedom based on him was nothing but a boyhood freedom. It was only when I began to learn that my boyhood freedom was an illusion. Illusion means what? That is not actually freedom, right? Boyhood freedom was not actually freedom, he realized. And he pointed when I discovered as a young man that my freedom had already been taken from me. It means he realized that means the kind of a freedom he was thinking, it was a boyhood freedom, it was not the actual freedom. And his freedom was what then? Now his freedom had already been taken away. What kind of a freedom? Now the kind of a freedom he started hunger for it. He wanted that, right? At first, the freedom he mentioned as a student, I wanted freedom only for myself, right? The transitory freedoms of being able to stay out at night. Staying out at night is my freedom, right? That was not there. And means as a student, whatever the freedom I wanted, so that freedom, right? Read what I pleased and what I interested, go where I chose. So that is called the freedom. Later, as a young man in Johannesburg, I learned for the basic and honorable freedoms of achieving my potential or abilities, of earning my keep, marrying and having a family, the freedom not to be obstructed in a lawful life, right? Now, those of the things were protested, those of the things were prohibited, those of the things were not given to an adult man. Then what do you say that? Is it the freedom? Now,
No.
the kind of a freedom he was talking about in the young age, the kind of a freedom he was thinking about in the boyhood age. So, what the difference that you find out? The boyhood freedom was an illusion, and the young age freedom, which was not given to him, it was taken to him. So, that is the reason. So, he pointed that how he was living. So, but then again, the author also stated, but then I slowly saw that not only was I not free, but my brothers and sisters were not free. Now, it was not the only Nelson Mandela who did not get that kind of a freedom. It was all the people or means youth, young age people of South Africa, right, whom he considered as his brothers and sisters, were not getting that freedom. That's why he pointed. I saw that what it was not just my freedom that was curtailed. The meaning of curtailed is called as a reduced. My freedom was reduced, or South Africa's free means all these young age people's freedom was reduced. But the freedom of everyone who looked like I did, right? So that is when I joined. So why that is when I joined this. So please do understand that the reasons of his joining, the reasons of his joining to the African National Congress, right? That is when the hunger for my own freedom became the greater hunger for the freedom. Please do note down this. This one is clearly indicating that what now why and when? Why and when did he join the African National Congress? So he joined African National Congress because he found that his freedom was reduced, not only his, but also means all the other adult or other people, right, whom he considered as the brothers and sisters, so their freedom also restricted. That's what means when he considered that to join himself in the African National Congress, right? So he stated that. Now, after that, what this is the last one, I think. Okay, yeah. So he pointed, hunger of my people. It was this desire, it was this desire for the freedom of my people to live their lives with dignity. What do you mean by dignity? The meaning of dignity is called as a self-respect, right? So the meaning of dignity is called as a self-respect. So he stated here very simple thought that self-respect, self-respect, and that animated my life, that actually changed my life, and that changed a frightened young man. So the author pointed that his quality was being a frightened young man into a bold one, right? Earlier he was afraid of, means afraid of raising his voice. Now he was nothing but a courageous, bold, right? So that drove, that took him to the law abiding attorney. Law abiding attorney means he was following to the law. He became a good lawyer to become a criminal. Now becoming a lawyer, right, government lawyer to become a criminal, right? So look into his kind of a transformation. The transformation shows that, and why this transformation he made. Now this transformation was made because of his desire for the freedom of his people, right, to live their lives with full of self-respect, right? That actually changed his life to become a fearful young man into a bold one, and becoming a law-abiding attorney to become a criminal, right? So that turned a family, that turned a family loving husband into a man without a home, right? Now he was living with his family, he loved his family too much, right? But now, means he loved without a family, right? Because he was working for the people of his country. He stated in the earlier that you have a twin obligation, one duty for the country, one duty for second duty for the, means family, right? And he was giving priority to the family first, and then after he was giving priority to the means people of his country. But later what happened, he realized that uh, if he gives priority to the country, right, then only his family get also same kind of a self-respect, right? So that is why, by giving the priority to the country or people of his country, so what happened, means he started ignoring, right? So his family, right? Ignoring means doesn't mean that he forget only, right? So he also stated that forced a life loving man to live like a monk. Life loving man means what? Who wants to live his life, or he wants to make himself congregate or associate into the society, right? He wants to live the convivial life, sociable life, but at the same time, he, because of this freedom, he lives disassociate, or he disassociate himself from the society, living a life of monk. So he stated, I'm no more virtuous or self-sacrificing than the next man. I'm no more, means virtuous or self-sacrificing than the next man. So he himself compares, right, with the other man, right, all the ordinary person, and stated that he is not that kind of a person who is, means sacrificing himself, right, right. But I found that I could not even enjoy the poor and the limited freedoms I was allowed, right, when I knew my people were not free, right? So he wanted to say that the kind of freedoms which were given to us, why cannot I use it completely, right? Why my freedom is restricted? So freedom cannot be separated or indivisible. You cannot divide the freedom. You cannot give this much of freedom to you, this much of freedom to that, right? The chains on anyone, right? The chains on anyone, please do carefully observe this one is really philosophical. The chains on any one of my people were the chains on all of them, right? If someone is restricted with the freedom, right, it means that restriction is to all the people, right? The chains on all my people were the chains on me. So the restriction given on to my people is the restriction given to me, right? So that's what he pointed. He also stated, I knew that, right? I knew that the operation must be the operator. Operator, what do you mean by operator? Uh, uh,
Sir.
what is,
Whites.
sorry?
So the whites are the oppressor.
No, I'm not talking who are the oppressor. I'm saying what is the meaning of oppressor.
Sir, who means take a control over some people that are the oppressor.
Yes. So you can say that what here people who humiliate, people who restricted, right? People who you know uh, means control over someone. I knew that the operation must be liberated. Operation must be liberated means what? The person who is controlling over others must be got freedom. Why? Now, because he carried the hatredness in himself, he was controlled by the hate. So that is why he must be getting the freedom. If he gets the freedom from that hatredness, then definitely the other person will get the freedom. So that's why he pointed. I knew that the oppressor must be liberated, right? Just as surely as the oppressed, right? The person who was humiliated, the person who was tortured by the oppressor, right, must be liberated when or once the oppressor got the liberation, right? A man who takes away, right, a man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred. So if I control you because I hate you, right? So, if a man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred. Prisoner of hatred means what? Now, if I control you, right, or if I restrict your freedom, it means I am under the control of hatredness because I hate you, and that hatredness presence in me. That's why I try to means I try to hate you, and or I hate you and I try to control you, right? I do not want your happiness. I do not want your means of freedom. I want you to control, right? And you will work under me, right? So you know that the practical situation, look into it. In offices you would find out, in schools, offices, schools, you would find out that in all in society even, right? If you see that somebody is getting some kind of a celebrity or some kind of a reward, some kind of a betterment, so you would see that the other people, instead of praising, instead of giving means hope, belief, and inciting attitude of uh, taking him up, right? So they only show the facial expression of happiness by grinning the face, right? And congratulating you, right? And sometimes they said some kind of a thing, but inside from their heart, right? They had a kind of a different thoughts, right? They had a kind of a different thoughts, right? It means they did not feel happy actually, right? So they just show kind of a psychophancy attitude. So a man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred. He is locked behind. He is locked behind the bars of prejudice. Prejudice means called as a bias and narrow-mindedness. Narrow-mindedness means called as a cheap thought, a cheap mentality, right? You will find out the people or the man who or the particular person who is trying to control you, trying to restrict your freedom, is a prisoner of hatred. And what he is trying to do now, he is under the control of jealousy, under the control of hatredness, right? And that is the reason he was making biased, and he was making cheap means cheap thought and cheap ideas, sharing cheap ideas, right? So the author also said that I'm not truly free, right? I'm not truly free if I'm taking away someone else's freedom, right? So he was just giving his means he is not controlling someone's freedom, but he is saying that, right? I cannot consider myself free if I am controlling someone's freedom, just as surely as I am not free when my freedom is taken from me. So he logically pointed this and proved it, right? He stated the oppressed and the oppressor. The oppressed and the oppressor are like, they are robbed of their humanity. So, oppressor and oppressed, who have been tortured and who tortured, actually, who have been tortured and who tortured. So, both are robbed of their humanity. So, it means they lose, they lost their kindness. They have been controlled over man's cruelty, jealousy, hatredness, right? That actually the reason of man's restricting others' freedom, right? Am I clear till this?
Yes, sir.
Clearly understood? Any
Yes.
any doubt, any query that you would like to ask me?
No.
Okay, that's great.